Welcome to the latest episode of Save Yourself Podcasts. I suppose today we're going to follow on from our podcast regarding the wellness wheel and start right in the middle of it and talk about mind, body and soul. I'm joined as always by Sarah in the Future Hub studio. Hi Sarah.
Hi, indeed you are joined by Sarah in the Future Hub studio.
And you are going to enjoy today talking about?
Well, I think really it's about having a human experience, isn't it?
It is. We said before the thing about the mind, body and soul is that we tend to talk about them as individual things rather than collective, or how they're, I suppose, is the word integrated, or is it interconnected? You know, they're not separate things, are they? They're all the same thing. Mind, body and soul are totally connected.
Of course they are, and I think that's probably one area where the medical industry has got something madly wrong, is that they separate the mind and the body. So they will deal with someone who maybe has got a mental illness.
And they don't even talk about the soul.
Or a physical illness. No, souls don't exist, obviously. We just don't have one, certainly not in that situation.
It's interesting, isn't it? We were having a conversation earlier about when we talk about wellness, and most people actually focus on illness, but I think we do need to discuss both, really what is wellness and what is illness. I always seem to start with these questions, don't I? What is? But They are both, they're both relevant, and I think we talk a lot about what we can do to keep ourselves well, and what truly is illness. And how do we combat that? How do we maintain good health? So they are really the same subject. I suppose it's almost like if you can imagine that in the middle, you're sort of sitting on the fence, you're in the balance. Am I really well? Probably not. Do I feel ill? Sometimes a little bit. But that's life, isn't it? Life is going to be full of ups and downs, with periods of wellness and periods of illness. And one thing we never take into consideration is there any benefit to being ill? I suppose.
I guess for some people, yes, there is. It comes down to personality, surely.
Oh, I thought you were talking about claiming benefits there. No, that's not what I got in mind. I was thinking that
some people love to be ill. It's like they're not happy unless they've got something to be, telling everyone about the latest thing that they've got. They're total hypochondriacs.
We said these are going to be truth podcasts. All of a sudden, you're upsetting half the audience already. Or did I say half? How do I know that half of our audience are hypochondriacs?
No. There's something I think people really need to start thinking about is the bits of themselves that function incredibly well, because we are incredible machines. We're not machines. We're incredible complex mechanisms, organisms, and a lot of what we've got is brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Well, we take so much of it for granted, don't we? And we take our wellness for granted at times. But I disagree with what you're saying before. We're not machines. To a certain extent, we are.
There are bits of us that act like machines. We've got pumps, and we've got drainage systems. It does really sound like plumbing.
Is this going to be a serious? Is this going to be a serious podcast this week, do you think? The reason why I mentioned that originally about the difference between being well and being sick is that there are benefits to being sick. I mean, one of the most important aspects. Is this going to go down as a blooper, or do you think the audience will think, gosh, these two are normal? Is the fact that when we talk about seasonal detoxes, which has been categorized into an illness, doesn't it? It's like, oh, you've got a cold, or you've got the flu, or allegedly I've heard there's some sort of deadly virus out there at the moment, or has been for the last 4 years, and then previous to that there was other ones. So we do have to have this conversation about what is, and what is a virus and what a virus isn't, or do they actually exist at all? And we've got to be careful here, because there are conditions that are viral. I don't believe for 1 minute there's any such thing as an airborne contagion, but that's something I think we need to talk about and discuss. The truth about the current I don't know, do we start talking in codes? I mean, let's agree a couple of things. Is that the thing that they stick in your arm, they don't stick it. The stick in your arm, let's call that the toxic shot. And I think one thing that most people that I've come across are not aware of is they talk about that thing that begins with a C and ends in 19. And they say, well, it does exist because I've had symptoms or I've had this, that, the other. But they're absolutely right about one thing. The C19 thing is a symptom. That's the name that's been given to the symptomology. The cause of it, allegedly, is something called SA, and then a respiratory situation. And then there was another Mediterranean one, an MER situation, etc. So I'm saying let's talk relatively in codes, because we know that our privacy and our freedom of speech has been, and that seriously affects our health as well, not being able to talk the truth.
Seriously compromised. Yeah, we are not able to express ourselves honestly anymore, which is pretty shocking. Freedom of speech has gone out the window.
Which all of these things again come back to the full lifestyle cycle of the way that we live, not being able to speak freely and honestly and openly. Do people do that anyway? I think there's an old saying, isn't there? People like to be liked. And sometimes when you speak the truth in the wrong circles, you're not going to be liked, are you, at all?
Well, we know because we've been through that.
Well, we're still going through it.
We are still going through it, yeah. But it's shocking when you can't actually express a truthful opinion, or even if it's just your opinion, you're not allowed to speak. And that's really been, for me, that's been one of the most debilitating and upsetting aspects. And talk about mind, body and soul. I mean, everyone's mind has been affected by those social pressures that have ended up being foisted upon us all when we can't speak our truth anymore.
And the other thing is regarding going back to the mind, body, soul situation. As we said before, everything about this life, when we get down to the nitty gritty, is about frequency and vibration. And your frequency and vibration alters within you if you feel restricted, as also you get benefit from that by actually feeling free, by a feeling of freedom. And you need to be able to speak honestly to have that freedom. And as we say, that's been restricted to a level never before known. Yeah,
and if you are actually in touch with the vibrations of your life, whatever those might be, a higher vibration is going to lift you up. It's an uplifting feeling. That connects you to your soul. That reminds you you've even got a soul. It takes you out of your body, and that's a wonderful thing.
Well, you know that I have a structured mind. Let's go back to trying to create a structure then to mind, body and soul. Can we break them down individually first of all, and then go back to putting them all back together? So massive subject as always. What is the mind? Is it the brain? Does it come from the brain? Is it associated to the brain?
Or is it the gut?
Well, that's a separate conversation, isn't it? You know, the true brain. But we're talking about the mind first of all, not the brain. Secondly, when we talk about body, are we talking about the body of a living flesh? And I suppose that brings us back to that. Is it a living, happy, healthy lump of meat? Or is it a chronically ill one? So I think that's probably what the majority of people think about when they think about their body. Is it a healthy body or a sick body? And then the soul. What is the soul? And, where is it seated? Now...
And has that soul lived multiple existences before, and it's just sitting in this particular body at this time?
So what would you like to start with first? Mind, body or soul before we go and interconnect them all?
I think we start with mind, and I tell you, we watched something this morning which was hilarious, but it was devastating at the same time. And it was that American guy, and he was just jabbering about all sorts of, everything that's happened in the last 4 years. It was just such a brilliant little meme. I think it was on TikTok.
Yeah.
And it was like you could see him about to explode. He was combusting with all this stuff that he has consumed and listened to and imbibed in one form or another.
Well, for those people who have not heard that, just to give it a quick explanation, there was a young man that just jumped on TikTok and started shouting out all sorts of, I wouldn't call them obscenities, but what he was really saying is that, right, I'm studying Tartaria and I'm not sure if Jesus Christ ever existed or not, and, sort of people have been injected with this, they've done the other, and blah, and he just went on and on and on with this constant diatribe, and I suppose, as you say, it was funny to listen to, but the sad side of that is that we know that so many people, which are our friends, our associates, our family, that must be going through this terrible, mindful struggle to say, I've spent my entire life trying to seek out the truth. Now all of a sudden, sort of there's so much information from so many sources, I can't work out what is the truth at all, and not just the truth, but the learning or the relearning of things that either have been said before or new things they're finding out. It is absolutely mind-blowing.
It's overloading, and
it is.
And the thing is, it's not just about taking on board new information. It's about offloading the stuff that is no longer relevant. And it's trying to work out exactly which bits to discard and which bits to actually start living by and thinking about in a serious way.
So going back to my favourite word, structure, then, let's go back to trying to give each of these three elements today, mind, body and soul. Let's start with then what do you believe is the mind?
Well, obviously I can only base it on personal experience, and I'm not a psychologist, and I don't have I don't think I have mental health issues, but other people might feel differently about that. The mind, I guess, for me is what I think about stuff and the stories that I tell myself. So a lot of that is my internal dialogue. So it's how I talk to myself. But it isn't necessarily how I express myself. I would suspect that it's mostly an internal experience.
Okay, a mindful experience. So
Yeah.
I suppose I'll ask you again the same question. You can always ask me back by any chance if you want to. What actually is the mind? I mean, first of all, let's state the obvious. Is it physical?
I guess it has to have somewhere for it to sit and buzz and, process. So there might be something, but maybe not. Maybe it's purely energetic. It certainly has a lot of energy and frequency in it, because that must be the electrical impulses or the energetic thought processes that are going on. But I don't know. I mean, people think it's in their brain. I think it's in my gut. My gut tells me what to do more often than my brain, I believe. So what about for you then?
Well, I think that
Thank you for asking, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks. I hate to do the long story, and I think that again by doing a little bit about how we interconnect all of these things, I don't know. And this is the reason why we want to do these podcasts is that you and I are being very candid, and we're just having a chat, and we're just sharing our own personal thoughts and feelings about pretty much everything. But it doesn't hurt to say I don't know. So when someone says to me, what is the mind? My truthful answer is I don't know. Now, I don't want to do this in reverse order by going back to interconnecting them all again, but what I'm trying to say to you is that can I actually scientifically put on a piece of paper and say, that is my mind? No, I can't. So I have to do it the other way. What I say to myself is, I know, or I think I know, I'm pretty sure that I have got a soul. So being a soulful person, and I am a soulful person, I'm not suggesting that everybody likes me, and I might have annoyed a lot of people. I'm not suggesting I'm a perfect soul, so I might be a good soul, and at times I've been pretty much a bad soul. I don't know. I'll let other people tell me what they think. But I think when I think about, first of all, what my soul is, I have to try and get my head around that, for want of a better word, to try and understand how my mind is linked into that, and then also into the physical. So I know I'm probably going backwards onto what I just said to you earlier about can we separate them out. I actually just don't believe I can at all.
Not at this stage, no. But if we think about the process of life and existence, there is a time which is at the point of death or soon thereafter, or maybe just before, who knows, where the body gives up and actually stops functioning and the soul lives on.
Well, this is what I was going to say to you when I said to you, we can talk about how the soul and the mind are connected, but also how the body is. The point I was trying to make there is that when you look at your physical being, so let's look at me now. So here is my physical flesh. Mm-hmm. We've talked earlier about the mind and the brain connection, the gut and the brain connection. This is where I find it difficult to break it down, which is why I've gone back to the mind, body, soul bit. So let's do this the other way around. We have a physical brain. I'm pretty much sure of that. And I think if you cut the top of my head off, you'd probably see one. Probably not as big as yours, but you'd see one. So there is a physical brain. But we've also said that the main brain in the body must be in the gut because of the gut-brain axis. So we're saying really our main brain is in our stomach. And is the brain that's in our head nothing more than a neurological system, which is interacting with your which processes your it's obviously the main, if you wish, source of your nerves. So do the nerves start in the brain and then spread out throughout the entire body? Now, we're not talking about this from a biological point of view or saying, well, no, some people are right, some people are wrong. I really don't know, so, and I think this is the part I'm trying to, or the point I'm trying to make. I truly don't know. I believe I've got a brain in my head, and I believe I've got a stomach, and I believe that my stomach actually is the first recipient of the majority of things that come into my body, and then advise my brain, and my brain says, oh, well, we've got to process this, we've got to do this. So I see them as processing units. The stomach is a processing unit, but I think it has its own level of intellect to work out what has come into the body. And when I say what's come into the body, it could be drink, it could be air, it could be fuel, water,
visual experience,
fluid.
Yeah.
So all those things are coming in. So I think the stomach has a hell of a lot to process, and it shares that knowledge with the brain. So if we look at traditional thought about the brain, first of all, then, so most people believe that my brain controls my entire body. I don't particularly believe that. I think it has a specific job to do, just like the stomach does. So let's break this down. So I put something in my mouth. I don't think my brain works out what that is. I think my stomach works out what it is. And then it works out how it's going to process it. So when something goes into your mouth, your first point of contact to a certain extent from how the body protects itself and looks after itself is you've got tonsils. So
and you've got taste buds as well.
Taste buds and tonsils. Yeah. So something comes into your mouth, so your tongue is working out what it is. Your tonsils are then saying, is this good or bad? Because it could be some form of a germ. Obviously, we need to talk about germs from a bacterial point of view and a viral point of view or a virus point of view, etc. But what I'm saying is that food and that fluid or that air or that intake goes into your stomach. The stomach has to decide how to process it. And I think it's the stomach that then advises the brain, well, I'm now doing this, so you've now got your job to do. So that's the brain in your head. It's the activity it has to perform at times of breathing, eating, drinking. And outside of that, it's always in control of your nervous system. So that's the way, first of all, I see the brain. So the mind, from a thought process point of view, is I'm not sure it's got anything to do with the brain at all. The way that I'm thinking and the way that I'm talking to you now, I don't particularly believe that that's been stored within my brain.
No.
Now, many people will say, well, you're wrong, Glyn, because it's been proved about, obviously, the cortex is within your brain, and you've got your male side, your female side, you've got your memory storage area, etc., etc. I'm not saying I'm right and anybody else is wrong. What I'm saying is...
And the pineal is in there too.
Correct. Yeah. What I'm saying is I actually don't know. So my gut instinct, of which you just mentioned earlier, which is something that I always rely upon, whether that's meeting a person, assessing a person, working with a person, loving a person, is my gut instinct tells me if something's right or wrong. And we don't trust it enough. We certainly don't trust it enough from what I'm seeing out there at this moment in time.
That's true.
So,
there's a massive disconnect, and that's because we've been trained out of making that connection.
Cognitive dissonance, a word that's going around all the time at the moment.
Yeah.
But the point I was going to go on to then is that what actually is my mind and where does mindfulness come from? And I would prefer to relate it more to being connected to my soul than to my physical body.
Yeah.
So now let's break down the soul then. You know, we are told or we're advised or people believe that the soul, you know, the seat of the soul is here in the center of the forehead. Again, I don't know, because is my soul and my mind and my body just not one? So as you said, when the body dies and the physical flesh goes, well, my mind and my soul are still there then?
Yeah.
Or does the mind die with the soul? Well, I don't believe so. However, that brings us on to another conversation of at the point of physical death, and if you are reincarnated, is as the slate being wiped clean.
Yeah, well, people don't remember much if they remember anything at all. I mean, sometimes you get a flash of something and you think, oh my God, I've been here before. You know, you walk into you walk into a town or a village or a room, a place you've never been before, and suddenly it's like, oh, I'm home, or this feels like home, or, oh, I recognise this place, I don't like it. You know, there's always those instinctive kind of responses, and that always makes me think that I've been here before.
Well, the saying is there's the deja vu, isn't there? And then there's transgression, hypnotic therapy, where people say they've gone back into previous lives. So that in itself is a separate subject, and I know we're going to be having that conversation with our good friend Katie when we talk not only about hypnotherapy but regression therapy, transmigration of the soul. You know, sort of we hear about people who have skill sets in remote viewing. You know, is this rubbish or is it real? Can these people truly take their soul outside of their physical flesh to go and transmigrate and go and look at what's going on?
Yeah.
Well, let's break that down just roughly, because this breakdown is showing us the connection and interconnection between the mind, body and soul. But does it have the capability, and can we separate these things out? So 2 examples I'd like to give then, if we think about the art of meditation. So a person who is exceptional in meditation, and we're talking perfection here, first of all, I do believe that meditation should be taking place in a sitting position. If you lay down, I relate laying down to going to sleep. So if you're sitting in an upright position, you really need to do that without being in much physical pain. So I think that true meditative practice, you need to have a body which is functional, that allows you to sit without pain. But why? Because when you're in a soulful state, as well as a meditative state, is you don't want to be thinking about your body.
No.
So you want to almost allow your body to be non-existent so that you can get to a mindful, focused state. But then your mind needs to be clear, not full of what problems did I have yesterday, what must I get on with today, I need to start planning tomorrow. The mind needs to be clear to allow yourself to be in a soulful state.
And that takes a huge amount of practice and discipline. It really does. I mean, I've only managed a few times through meditation to get to a place of what I would consider to be not emptiness, but nothingness, to the point where you could actually begin to have an epiphany of some sort. And I remember only twice where I managed to get to a point where I was connected to a Merkaba spinning above my head, and it was the most profound experience. And that was actually through doing some work with Joe Dispenza. And
the reason why I bring that subject up, is that a mindful experience or a soulful experience then?
It felt soulful. Absolutely.
Well, that's the whole point I'm making, is that we talk a lot about what mindfulness is, to be in a positive mindful state or condition. And a mindful resting, a place of rest and relaxation in your own mind. When we talk about soon what true health and wellness is, you have to be in a good state of mindfulness. But I think the point I'm making is that surely the best place to be is to have a body that's still, have a mind that's still, so that you are acting, if you wish, in a soulful way, or enjoying a soulful experience. Now, obviously, we still enjoy soulful experiences in the physical, and I think this is the point I'm trying to make, is that if I start having a conversation with you now, is that my vocal cords that's speaking to you? Is it my mind that's working out what I want to say to you? Because I'm not thinking, I'm just speaking. So surely it's my soul that's talking to you. So my soul can speak to you via my mouth and vocal cords, or I could be quiet, which, as most people will say, is quite difficult for me.
It's an unusual and a rare experience.
Can we not then be soulful just at a soulful level? Well, of course we can. Souls are interconnecting and being together in a soulful manner all of the time, as well as there's a level of heightened mindfulness.
Yeah.
And we need to discuss this when it comes to soulfulness amongst our other soul fraternity. And I do believe that there are different sets of souls that connect in different ways. Then there's the mindfulness, then there's the physical connection. So all three can be considered separate, but they still, to me, are exactly the same thing.
It's it's alchemy and it's magic, if you ask me. I mean, sometimes you know what it's like when you step into a new situation and you meet a load of people in the room, but there's one or two people, maybe not, but sometimes there's another person in the room and you look at them and they look at you and you look at them and there's a recognition and you don't know what that recognition is about. And it is, for me, that is on a soulful level, because you recognise each other in a way that is not, oh, I saw you down the pub or whatever. You know, it's a very profound experience when it happens.
I love the fact that you brought in brought up the word alchemy as well. As you know, we're going to be having a chat with our friend Stuart soon, who's he's quite a, I hate to use the word authority, but he's been a dedicated person and he really does enjoy talking about alchemy. And it's funny there, because I think that when we say what is an alchemist, automatically I think a lot of people think, oh, it's a person that's physically doing something. The great thing about alchemy is it's actually coming from an external source, isn't it? You know, a good alchemist or a true alchemist. We've talked before about positive intention, how you can influence something with positive intention. That's exactly what the great alchemists do. They're drawing on the ether. They're drawing on their understanding and connection with the universe through a soulful and a mindful way to potentially deliver something physical.
Yeah.
These people can alter the structure of water, of solids, of metals.
Yeah.
So I just love the word alchemy.
Yeah. Well, we all need a bit of alchemy in our lives. I mean, it's happening all the time.
That could be a song.
Yeah.
We all need a bit of alchemy in our lives.
The thing is, it's happening all the time. We are surrounded by the alchemy and the magic of being a human in this time. I guess it was always thus, you know, whether you were back in the caveman times or whatever, you know, there was probably alchemy going on then too. But there are times in our lives when you feel more in the body, you feel more like you're here having a human experience. Very often that's when it's like tough. You know, very often it's the lower level experiences that really bring us back into the body and make us feel trapped here or you know, bound some way by the physicality of life, whether it's illness or whether it's a bad situation, whether it's, you know, trauma. But as soon as we start to have a bit more of a positive experience, the vibration goes up and you feel less connected to the body because the body is no longer troubling you, you know, and you're off in a different realm really, and it's a much more energetic experience.
Going back to the mind part of this then, is it mind, is it brain, the conscious and the subconscious? You know, I always find that a fascinating conversation. You know, when we think about our conscious mind is our awakened mind. So whilst we're awake during the course of the day, we consciously make decisions on what we're going to do. But subconsciously, we're doing things that we don't need to think about. Walk, drive, breathe.
Yeah.
All of the things that come to us naturally. And yet when we go to sleep, and this is why sleep is so important, it's the conscious mind that stops.
Yeah.
So as we go into a state of sleep, we can talk about dreams as well, but as we go into a state of sleep, the conscious mind has stopped working. So here's something to question then. If when you go to sleep, the conscious mind isn't working, and we all know that sleep is really one of the best forms of medicine along with laughter, and so maybe the conscious mind is part of our problem then. Now, There's also another argument to that, is maybe the subconscious mind is part of our problem, because the subconscious mind, has it been programmed with good intention, or has it been programmed by the lies that it's been listening to and hearing, of what some people might have considered a good education? Actually, the subconscious mind has been programmed. And the reason why I bring this subject up is that a lot of people say, oh, I've got a really positive mental attitude. I'm just like, towards what? Well, towards my condition, and I'm going to sort it out because I'm being positive. You better believe that, because the subconscious mind knows whether you're lying or not.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of people who say, I can do this, I can sort that. And I'm like, is this just words? Or is that really the way that you feel? Because the one thing you can't lie to is your subconscious mind, because it knows you.
Yes.
It's been listening to you your entire life. You can't trick it. Now, there are some mantras, which, we were only talking about this a few weeks ago, is that you can't lie to your subconscious mind. And it's not that you're tricking it, but you need to get it to think and react in a different way. And the way to do that is to question it.
Yes.
So it's to make a statement. What would it feel like to be pain-free? What would it feel like to be strong? What if I could achieve that? And the subconscious mind apparently listens when you ask a question, rather than just make a positive statement of intent.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, you see, that's a massive subject. I mean, this is the thing, is, we say, oh, we're gonna have a conversation about mind, body and soul. This is like huge. We need months to do this. In fact, maybe even a lifetime. I wanted to just talk a little bit about instinct, because we mentioned gut instinct. And it's what's interesting for me is that you can have instincts that will preserve you in difficult situations, if you listen to your gut instinct. But then we also have base level instincts, the instincts with which we're born, like, if you're sitting in a tree and you fall asleep, you wake up before you fall out of the tree. It's that kind of basic instinct. So what do you think about that? I mean, for me, it's like one of them feels like it's almost an elevated thing, and one of them feels like it's just a really basic thing.
Yeah, I mean, sort of basic instincts also come back to gut instincts, which also relate to common sense. So I don't mean to change the subject here, but I potentially have.
Yeah, no, common sense is... I like common sense.
Well, it's on a huge vacation at the moment globally, isn't it? It's just not being applied. Again, I think the three things, again, they're in synergy with each other. My basic instinct, I consider that to be almost a survival instinct. My core says my
Run.
basic instinct is to do this. Yeah. My gut instinct is, again, almost an immediate reaction to something. You think, well, I better listen to that, because my gut instinct's telling me, well, that's good, go and join it, or it's not good, go away from it. Now, obviously, we know about the fight and flight mechanism with stress, and we're going to do a full podcast on what stress truly is. But as we say, that brings me back to common sense. Does your common sense come from your basic gut instinct, or is it something that you're taught? Clearly not, because you're not taught gut instincts, basic instincts, and you're certainly not taught common sense.
Well, we used to
Either
be.
you've got it or you haven't. No, I don't believe you're taught common sense.
People can demonstrate common sense. When people do the right thing instinctively, and they basically don't complicate something. It's like, well, what's the obvious thing to do? What's the easiest, obvious, cheapest, fastest thing to do? It's probably to do with common sense. As soon as it becomes overly thought about, or questionable in some way, or complex, or money gets involved, or you have to sort of go through some rigorous lawful system in order to come to a conclusion, that's common sense has gone out the window.
So, as you rightfully said earlier, when we bring up a subject, we could talk about each subject for hours and hours, and if not days. But we have to keep this podcast to a reasonable length of time. So I'm going to make a conclusion, and I'd ask you to make a conclusion, and then no doubt on the back of that, both of our conclusions will spark up an additional question. But before we do so, you've got your hand up.
Well, I was just thinking about coming back to the wellness wheel, which should be on the screen, hopefully. the mind, body, soul on the wellness wheel sits in the middle. So that's you firmly in the middle. And then everything else is what girds you around. It girds your life around. And I think that's the important thing, is that we have to remember that the mind, body and soul is impacted by everything that sits around it, by everything in your environment, all the various factors of society that have been constructed around us and in which we've been forced to live. If you think about the first layer being water, air, land, sunlight, food.
The impact of nature.
And
intuition. You can feel soulful just having the sun on you.
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
your head.
So all of these things are going to have an impact on your mind, body and your soul, and the experience that you're having in your life at this point in time. That first middle layer around you is lovely and kind of experiential and nicely basic, but also accessible and mostly free. It is mostly free, apart from food. And then you've got the more complicated bits where society really takes a grip, with relationships, law, health, education, finance and careers. They're all massively complex and structured and organised situations. So we just need to acknowledge that mind, body and soul is impacted by all of these things. But equally, your mind, body and soul can have an impact on all of these things.
You can take control of them.
Yeah.
Not all of them, sort of different people can control different aspects of it. But I think that there is an aspect of there that you need to actually take control of all of these external factors that are around that. So I'm going to bring this part then to a conclusion and give you, if you wish, just my briefest overview then, to look at starting with my comments on mind, body and soul as a collective. Is I think they are all interconnected, and I think we do have to take them as the three things together. So my body is physical flesh, but it's impacted by my mind. And so therefore it must be connected to my mind. My mind, I believe, and the way that I speak and the way that I feel and I live is coming from my soul. So I believe that the soul and the body and the mind are all totally connected. So yes, we can have another conversation about, well, when the body dies, you've just left that part of it behind, and where does the mind and the soul then go? Does it actually go anywhere? And that's the other thing that's going to be a fascinating conversation with a few people that's going to come and talk to us. We can get their opinion. Is that we almost have this thing of, well, I was born physical, and then my mind starts to work, and then my soul jumps in. Is that true? Is it not the other way around? Is it not that your soul is always there, and then it acquires a body, and does it then acquire a new mind? Because are you coming into this new body with a clean sheet? Well, there's a question there, isn't there? When we talk about these young child prodigies and these geniuses, did they come back with their mind, or does their soul already know their physical skill set? Like you get a 3-year-old person, three-year-old child who can play the piano just like as well as Mozart.
I know, crazy.
So crazy. This is all we're doing here, as always, guys, is we're trying to start a conversation. We want everybody else's thoughts and feelings on what's your mind, what's your body, and what's your soul. So to me, they're all of them.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's the all and it's the nothing. And is there any difference, really?
Well, I'm happy to say that I've got it all and you've got nothing.
Thank you.
Well, that wouldn't be true, though, would it? Anything you want to conclude this podcast with, Sarah?
I think that whatever happens, we are all one.
I thought you were going to say we're all doomed.
No.
We're not doing the Armageddon conversation just yet, are we?
That's next week.
Well, we are going to do a conversation on this, guys. We all know that we're going through incredibly troubled times at the moment. And someone asked me a question the other day, and they said, what's the difference between Armageddon and the apocalypse?
Armageddon out of here.
Yep, you will be if you don't stop interrupting me.
Sorry,
there's no need for that at all. I think the difference in Armageddon and the apocalypse really is a case of what have they said that it is, and what do you believe that it is? So I've got my thoughts on the difference between an Armageddon and an apocalypse, but we are going to do a podcast on it. But again, let's not make it something to be afraid of. Let's make it something that we should be talking about. It's very, very difficult times out there, and it's surreal.
Yes.
And I don't know about you, but my mind and my body and my soul get a bit shook up sometimes with what's going on.
Well, I think it's a time to really develop your understanding and your knowledge of things rather than...
And your feelings of them
yes,
as well.
Yes, rather than putting your head in the sand. Because hiding from it and cutting it off and going, la, 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 I'm not listening, isn't going to help you very much. But I think that people shouldn't be frightened of knowledge. They shouldn't be frightened of understanding. They shouldn't be frightened of inquiring. And they shouldn't be frightened of sharing
their knowledge.
Yeah.
Although a lot of people have been afraid to speak what they think is their truths.
Well, they've been cut down. They've been shut up. They've
Indeed.
been told that they're stupid. They've been told that they're a conspiracy theorist and that they're somehow unhinged. Well, you have it from me. You're not unhinged. You're just having a human experience in a very weird situation.
Yep. Well, I suppose from my mind, body and soul to yours, until the next one, Sarah, thank you.
Yes, thank you, mind, body and soul of Glyn.
And I have to remember to say, because Digby will tell me off, our production manager, please do like, subscribe, and always pass a comment on your thoughts and opinions of what we've discussed, and any questions you've got. We love to have your feedback.
And share this with your friends.
If you've got any.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.